The Economic Community of West African States, Ecowas, has ordered its standby force to restore constitutional order in Niger Republic. The president of the Ecowas Commission, Omar Aliou Touré, announced the decision in a communique of the resolution of the Ecowas Extraordinary Summit held in Abuja on the socio-political situation in Niger Republic after its second extraordinary meeting in Nigeria's capital, Abuja. The Commission also says it will enforce all measures, in particular border closures and strict travel bans and assets freeze on all persons or groups of individuals whose actions hinder all peaceful efforts in ensuring the smooth and complete restoration of constitutional order in Niger.
Direct the Committee of the Chief of Defense Staff to activate the ECOWAS standby force with all its elements immediately. Order the deployment of the ECOWAS standby force to restore constitutional order in the Republic of Niger. Underscore its continued commitment to the restoration of constitutional order through peaceful means.
Now, for more insight on the Ecowas resolution, I'm now being joined by Dr. Humphrey Orjiakor. He is Nigeria's former permanent representative to the United Nations office in Geneva. So glad to have you join us, Ambassador, and thanks for your time. These are indeed trying period for Nigeria and the subcontinent, to the extent that many would like to understand what we're dealing with at the moment.
Thank you very much for having me on the program. I'm here to do my best to help explain what I think the ECOWAS Heads of State, the ECOWAS Authority, is trying to achieve in Niger.
So, let's quickly delve into that, because these are issues that many have started asking. Some are asking if ECOWAS is not violating international law, if it's asked that there should be a standby force. Now, let us in on what this is for the subcontinent.
I don't think that the real problem ECOWAS is going to have in any military action in Niger is that of legality, more than that of appropriateness at this time. To be asking the standby force to get set, we are hoping, is a diplomatic kind of bluff. Because from all indications and from all reports from all quarters, the idea of a military intervention in Niger at this time does not serve the short, medium, or long-term interests of ECOWAS itself and the member states that are supposed to provide troops for this standby force and this the facilities in Nice to fight a war at this time. It is good that they couched this language in rather some ambiguous terms, because you hear the communique talking about peaceful resolution for quite some of the time, and then ended with this talk of nothing is taken off the table. Military option is also if everything else fails. Well, the idea of the ECOWAS standby force means that we have at least 3 weeks to probably even much longer to get this force in place, which period offers a long opportunity for diplomacy to weigh in properly. This time, thoughts will be thought out. This time, there will be no rush and hush to prove any victory over anybody. I do not think that what the Africans want from their leaders at this time is victory over any country. what Africans want, West Africans want, is peace in the sub-region. And we don't see any need to use military force to achieve something that diplomacy well articulated, well thought out, and well prepared for, could sort out ultimately. The part of the confusion we are seeing in the ECOWAS authorities' decision is differentiating between the need to restore democracy in the sub-region, in a Republic of Niger Republic at this time, and this continuous emphasis on restoring President Badou as the legitimate president of Niger. It rings like the heads of states are saying that the president is Niger. Niger exists before the president. So the emphasis would be on restoration of democracy. And there is no reason that democracy could not be restored and peace reigns in Niger at the same time, instead of using force. In the middle term, it doesn't serve the interests of the sub-region. In the long term, it will virtually destroy ECOWAS itself. And that's not something we can think is in the interest of anybody at this time. And for Nigeria, which is, first of all, the president of ECOWAS at this time is our new president, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, who has just come into office, yes, and is looking after a country that is still in a state of flux, both in terms of security, in terms of its economy, and in terms even of the legitimacy of the administration itself until these matters are finally resolved. So in the short term, in the medium term, in the long term, it is not good for Africa. It's not good for the sub-region. It's not good for Nigeria. Yes. To be honest, I belong to a group of retired career ambassadors of Nigeria. That is the largest diplomatic umbrella body I know in this country that has some of the best diplomatic minds by way of training, by way of exposure, and by way of experience. And in that community of retired career ambassadors, I have not had a single voice dissenting from the idea that the situation in Niger Republic should be resolved through peaceful diplomatic rather than military means. That is what I see at this time concerning that.
Good thing you just spoke to us about a distinguished body of diplomats who also see it the way you have just so expressed. But again, how difficult is it for ECOWAS or the larger body, AU, to understand the importance of seeking other means other than the last resort? Because we've seen quite a number of dislocation in some of these African states that have gone into war, even within itself, as we've seen in Ethiopia and the Tigrayans. So let us in on what it is within such body like ECOWAS for it to understand the importance of not towing the line of a military force.
In fact, that's a very beautiful question. Probably the most important reason many people in the diplomatic community feel there should be no use of force in this is because there is a simple question to be asked. For who would Nigeria and ECOWAS be going to war? In whose interest would that really be? In 2019, an Italian lady who eventually became his prime minister, his current prime minister, made a statement that reverberated across Africa and across the world. She was talking about the still hegemonic role that France, some call it imperialistic role, that France still plays in Francophone Africa. And in Nigeria and Ecowas, the experience of French suzerainty, I really call it French suzerainty because French colonialism in West Africa particularly doesn't seem to really ever ended. If you follow the 11 articles of agreement between France and its former colonies. So, when these things come out, many people, whether they're in Niger, whether they're in Mali, whether they're in Burkina Faso, these are people, they listen, they understand, they hear. It is not good. It doesn't sound good that over almost 60 years after independence, France still has this kind of control over these countries. So now, if the young Turks of Francophone Africa are beginning to rebel against that kind of domination, colonial domination, so many years after, and the way they express it is this: the emphasis should not be on restoring a president to power so much as restoring the freedom of giving the Africans, giving the Nigerians the freedom they need, which their people clamor for, and at the same time be able to sustain democracy in Niger, as in Mali, as in Burkina Faso. That's why progressive thinkers are saying force is not what is required here. What is required here is to take the opportunity of this crisis, because there's a silver lining in this crisis. That silver lining is to finally sit down with France and say, you cannot continue to run West Africa. I remember the ECO was supposed to be the common currency of West African states. And this had taken over 3 decades of continuous negotiations, of continuous haggling. When it came almost to a point of execution, when we would have said, oh, success has been achieved at last, a singular French action by France, torpedoed it immediately by introducing what they called ECO, after which we never heard about it again. So this offers an opportunity for ECOWAS heads of state to come down, sit down properly, and think these things through. Take advice from those who are thinking, the researchers, the diplomats, the diplomatists, and see an opportunity here to say, France losing out. Let these countries enjoy their independence. Let them control their own currency. Let them control their own resources. Let them have contracts with any which countries, any which people they want, as it suits their national interest. Everything cannot be controlled from Paris. At the end of the day, that's the main thing this is about. So if we are going to go to war in order to restore Bazoum and restore similar heads of state and government, are we doing that for the Nigerians, or are we doing it for France? Are we doing it for the EU? Recall that Niger Republic is probably the 7th largest producer of uranium in the world. At the same time, Niger Republic is one, if not the poorest country on planet Earth. How do we reconcile all that kind of stuff? And all they get is, we are giving you foreign aid, we are protecting you. What is that? So the African heads of states should be more, both at the AU level and at the ECOWAS level. This is the time to sit back and really think these things through. We do not need force, because the consequences will be dire. And even coming closer home here to Nigeria, are we going to deploy Nigerian troops made up of Hausa, Fulani, Yoruba, Igbo, and so on, to go and kill Nigerians who are mostly Hausa people? Are we even looking at the possible consequences of that action in our own country, Nigeria, in the short term?
Well, I think you've raised quite a plethora of questions there, not rhetorical, but questions that really must be answered by African leaders. And also, it has also brought in the question of sovereignty, which many say belongs to the people. In other words, they have the right to determine their political system and how they should be governed. Quickly, before we let you go, Ambassador Orjiakor, the silver lining you pointed to here is one aspect it doesn't look like Ecowas has taken a look at, and it has to do with the freedom, genuine freedom of French speaking African countries. Now, as we wrap up this, you've seen some kind of move by traditional and religious leaders. Sheikh Dairu Bauchi, the former CBN governor, Lamido Sanusi. Do you think what this latest move from ECOWAS may have jeopardized the success made by these religious and traditional rulers?
No, I do not think it jeopardizes anything, provided they are not working against the objectives of the former track of diplomacy. Double track or dual track diplomacy is quite common practice. If official delegation, for instance, the sent sometime last week was not received in Niamey, but the Sanusi personal or private demarche was given reception. Yes, it becomes useful as a track, as a way to reach out and say, listen, these are other things we are offering which you are not prepared to listen to. Maybe when you have that kind of dual track diplomacy, it could work where all this talk of belligerency, of saber rattling, of sanctions and boycotts and all of that fell. A dual track approach could work. So we should encourage, but they should also be managed. Yes.
Well, Ambassador Humphrey Orjiakor would like to thank you for your time. Many thanks for your insights.